Hey there, Bobby Klink from Your Online Genius here. Wanted to pop in with kind of a quick message on something that I'm seeing a lot of today in the online space. And I wanted to make sure that I addressed it. There these days is an epidemic of what I see as failed launches for entrepreneurs who are just getting started in creating and building online businesses, whether it's courses or memberships or anything like that. And these entrepreneurs, they build a product, they put all this time, all this money into creating a product, and then maybe try to create a business around that product. But then they launch and they hear crickets, like nobody buys it. It's almost like, some people believe if you build it, they will come. And that's just not true. The reality is, though, like if you talk to, kind of the big name entrepreneurs who've been in the space for a while, they'll tell you it used to be easy to sell online digital products. Leads were cheap. It wasn't a saturated market. People were buying. I've heard some of my mentors say that say 5 years ago, if you had a good product, you could sell it without good marketing. Or if you had good marketing, you could sell a crap product. And that was kind of the way it used to be. But times have changed. It's just not going to work that way anymore. It doesn't work that way today, and it won't moving forward. The reality is that we are trying to sell probably the hardest thing there is to sell in the market. We're trying to sell digital ones and zeros. I mean, think about that for a second. If you have a course, if you have a membership, there's not something physical that people can hold. Like, my coffee cup. Someone can sell this to me easily because I need something to hold my coffee. And it's very clear that I need that. And it's very clear that a cup is what I need. But with our digital courses, with our memberships, with all of those things, it's not that clear. People aren't going to see that. That's why when you hear people talk about it, you have to sell the transformation, not the product. But the problem is, even within that, it's hard to do. And what I see struggling entrepreneurs do is they try to model the approach that they see the 7 and 8 figure entrepreneurs using. And maybe they even read their book or take their course and just say, okay, all I've got to do is follow these step-by-step advice and boom, I'm going to make money. But if you're doing that, I've got a simple question. How's that working out for you? If you're like most online entrepreneurs and that's what you've done, it hasn't worked out well. And I can give you an example. I've done it too, candidly. So one of my first kind of real introductions to online marketing, to kind of understanding the concepts behind it, all of that stuff was when I was gonna take the information from Russell Brunson's book. I don't remember if it was .com secrets or expert secrets. I don't remember which, but he teaches you a concept of the perfect webinar and teaches you to do these webinars every single week for a year. And then after that, you'll get really good at it and you can automate and you can do all this. Well, here's the problem. That might have worked in the old days where leads were cheap, where you could get someone onto a webinar for $1, which I hear these stories from some of these successful entrepreneurs that they could do that. Nowadays, that's not going to happen. Nowadays, if you want to run a webinar, there's a good chance you're going to pay $10 for a registration, depending on what market you're on. And only about, in a good case, 30% of those people show up, which means you're paying $30 for every person who shows up for a webinar or more. And when you think about it, if you're paying that amount of money, it's hard when you're a struggling entrepreneur to actually get people and to run weekly webinars. So I was trying to spend, at some point, I think I was spending like $1,000 a week on Facebook ads, and I would be lucky to have 2 people show up live for my actual webinar. I don't remember what I was paying per lead, but we'd pay that and maybe I'd get 5 on their live. I don't know, but it was not a lot. And I'm just going to tell you, doing weekly webinars for 5 people is not fun. You're not going to like it. You're going to lose energy. It's not going to work out well for you. So I've done that. That was a mistake I made. But the reality is, I don't want to just rely on this. I think you can understand that trying to model someone else's behavior isn't going to work great. And the reason why is this. You are in a different place from a 7 or 8 figure entrepreneur when you're starting out. You don't have the money they have. You don't have the audience that they've already built up. You don't have the years of experience honing your particular message for your particular crowd, much less the skills of messaging. I'm not talking about the particular messaging. I'm just going to tell you, when you listen to those, multiple 7 and 8 figure entrepreneurs, they are just natural in their messaging and how they talk these things through. And I say natural, they're not natural. No one does this naturally. But guess what? If you've been in the space, if you've been crafting and honing this skill for 5 years, you're going to get good at it. You're going to get good at doing what are things called thought reversals. You're going to get good at busting objections. You're going to get good at really kind of, going to the core of things and dealing with it. But guess what? When you're starting out, you're not there. And so if you're not there, trying to use their model where they can immediately put those skills to work, even if you have a script, the problem is everything can't be scripted. And so you're not going to be able to do it. But on top of that, you don't have a team, you don't have peers, you don't have partners to help you in the process like these big name people do. I like to say that for us, or for people who are starting out as entrepreneurs, to try to simply say, I'm just going to do what someone making $5 million or $10 million this year in their business is doing, would be kind of like someone who's just starting to run saying, you know what, I'm going to train just like those pro marathoners. I think you can see that that's not going to work well. It's not going to end well for those people starting out. It's going to end up with you or whoever's doing it being kind of broken and dejected. And I see this happen over and over and over again. And it starts with an entrepreneur who has all of this fire, and it ends with them just giving up. And it tends to go down, this, I don't want to say a script, but kind of a pattern. So the entrepreneurs tend to start by saying, hey, if I use the plan and the script and just execute exactly what they say for their launch plan from some pro, and if they pay for the course, et cetera, they're going to make it work. And I'll tell you, it works for some people, but a lot of people it's not going to work for. And I just tell you this because I don't know about you, but I've been in plenty of groups where people, just complain about, I literally did everything they told me and nobody bought. And the reason why is that when you think about it realistically, marketing isn't something you can just read a script for. It's not something where it is, just these steps. You're going to have to craft your messaging. You're going to have to do all that. No one can do that for you. And that process isn't something that anyone can teach you that, hey, I can do it just like them. It's not Mad Libs. It just doesn't work if you try to do it in a Mad Libs approach. That is never going to work. But what I tend to see happen is after people have that first experience with it not working, most people don't quit, which is good, right? I mean, it's good that entrepreneurs aren't going to quit. But what happens is these struggling entrepreneurs think, I just need a different kind of launch vehicle. So maybe instead of a webinar, what I need to be doing is a 3-part video series like the product launch formula method. The problem is, and look, this is what what kind of the multiple 6 and 7 and 8 figure entrepreneurs know is the different launch vehicles aren't really that different. No matter how we slice it, dice it, etc., you're basically going to be conveying the same information, and you're going to be doing the same things, and you have to be busting the objections, and you have to be messaging right, and it's all going to be the same. And the more advanced methods, like using a multi-part, video series where there's a longer period of time and more lead up and all that, that can work, and it can be very effective for people. I was at a mastermind this week where I had a panel of the other people in that mastermind were talking about how they had just done kind of a live version of that, and they were there for all of them. It was the biggest launch they'd ever done. But here's the problem. Those are more advanced launches. And they're more advanced launches for a lot of reasons. And the biggest part of it is that you have to be good to the point that you can build excitement and keep people's attention for a week and a half, not just for an hour-long webinar. And I'm going to tell you, if you can't get people and start to get conversions, get people coming to your webinar, attending and buying from that, switching to a different launch format isn't going to work. That would be kind of like, a store owner who can't get anyone to come in the door thinking, well, all I need to do is have a more, elaborate, elegant display inside. And then if I do that, it'll solve the problem. No, because it doesn't solve the fundamental problem that you can't get people in the door to start with. And that's the fundamental problem that most entrepreneurs are struggling with, is getting people in the door the first time and then convincing them and converting them. And that is something that is hard to do. And then the other mistake that a lot of online or struggling entrepreneurs make is they think, well, I can solve it all with Facebook ads. And I'm going to be honest with you, I made this mistake. Without a doubt, I made this mistake. I had no audience. I thought, you know what? I'll just spend a bunch of money on Facebook ads. I'll get an audience and then I can sell to them. It meant I spent $10,000 to make a single sale to someone who asked for a refund on day 29. That's what happens. And the reality is that is not an uncommon story. Because if you don't have your messaging dialed in, if you're not, or if you don't know your customer already and your fan already, creating a product they want, getting the messaging right, and doing all of that is gonna be hard. You're not going to get them in the door cheap to start with as a lead. And then once you get them in as a lead, you're going to have a tough time converting them. It just is. That's the reality of what's happening. You can't pour fuel on a fire, which is what Facebook ads are, unless you already know what you're doing. You've got a fire going and you just want to make it bigger. Until you've got that fire going to start with, I mean, pouring gas on it does no good. So Facebook ads aren't going to solve the problem. The reality, though, the biggest problem here with looking at what other entrepreneurs are doing, like the very successful ones, is that we kind of ignore the work they did, the foundational work that got them to where they are. The reality is those six, the multi-six, the 7 and 8 figure entrepreneurs already have a following of dedicated fans. Seriously, I'm going to ask you that question. Can you think of one big name successful entrepreneur who doesn't have like a following of fans who aren't just fans, but devoted fans? Meaning people who will come to their defense at a moment's notice, people who will answer their questions, who will love to jump on the phone with them to do market research, who will help them, they can kind of listen to their fans and understand what they're saying so they know the right messaging. And, fans who will basically say, I don't care what you're offering, I want to buy it. The reality is every one of these big name entrepreneurs has that. They have the fangirls and the fanboys. And I don't say that in a bad way. I'm going to tell you this funny story. I was in a Facebook group where we were having this discussion about webinar methods, and someone was talking about the perfect webinar, which is Russell Brunson's method, and trying to say that what Amy Porterfield teaches in her product is basically the same. And I said, no, I think it's very different. And the person said, well, yeah, look, I know you're I don't know what they said, they used a word like basically that you're an Amy Porterfield, fan for life or something like that, and used it almost like it was a bad thing. The reality is I am because I've seen what she did. But the point is that these big name entrepreneurs have that, whether it's Russell Brunson, whether it's Amy Porterfield, whether it's James Wedmore, I don't care who they are. They've got those fans who say, hey, I like the way they do it. I want to be with them. I want to follow their approach. And those fans are the linchpins of their business. And so that is what a lot of entrepreneurs are missing. They're trying to skip that step of getting those fans. And you can't do it. Well, you can, but you're not going to succeed if you do that. If you want to build a business that's going to be successful over the long term, the first thing you've got to do is find your true fans. And it's a long process. Sometimes it doesn't have to be, but it's not something that you can skip over. If you skip over it, you are asking to be in the epidemic of failed launches. And I know because I made all of these mistakes. When I first started in the online space, I thought I could do it myself. I thought I was smarter than people. I thought I knew what entrepreneurs needed, so I could create a course without having fans, kind of really talking to people and knowing what they needed and understanding their messaging. I didn't do any of that stuff. I skipped it all. And then I tried to launch it, and I tried to save it with Facebook ads. And I used, to be clear, I spent about $10,000 in Facebook ads to get people onto my list and then into a webinar. I don't remember how many people registered. I used the perfect webinar script by, not script, but the perfect webinar model by Russell Brunson, with the thing created with the help of, this software that they have. I think it was called Funnel Scripts. It will help you actually kind of create the messaging based on your messaging and really put it into a framework, et cetera. I did all that. And I delivered the webinar well. I mean, I went back and watched it. I didn't do a horrible job. I did a pretty good job at it. And after $10,000 of Facebook ads, I had one person buy. And then she asked for a refund on day 29, never having looked at the course. And so I was like, oh. And so I was trying to reassess, and I was working with Facebook ads team at the time. Again, so like I said, I thought, I can solve it with Facebook ads. And so the idea was, okay, well, we'll do more webinars. We'll do another launch in 2 weeks. And what I'll tell you is I tried that and I didn't get a lot of people in it. I got very few people in the second webinar because I had already, spent the money and the people I got on my list, I'd invited them and that didn't work out. And so then I thought, it's this live webinar. That's the problem. I need to go evergreen. And so I paid some people to help me do that. That didn't work either. None of that stuff helped because I was trying to model the launch method without doing the work that I needed to do first. Things only shifted for my business when I stepped back and I said, the first thing I need to do is find my fans. And then once I find my fans, I need to figure out and learn from them and serve them and do all of that and put in the time to do that and only launch after I'd done that. That shift, that change in mindset is what took me from a entrepreneur lawyer who literally, was about to quit. In January and February of last year in 2018, I was on the verge of quitting. But it took me from there to someone who right now, sitting here today, I'm on pace for a $750,000 year in 2019. I don't do anything complicated. These days, I don't even use launches. I'm definitely not using launch models or more complicated launch models. I basically said, I'm going to step back and do the fundamentals. And when I stepped back and did the fundamentals, it changed everything in my business. And again, what I truly believe is that if you are in the trenches trying to build an online business, you need to do the same thing. Trying to use a launch model, trying to think that it's all about coming up with the right launch model, or that it's all about, I just need the perfect webinar script, or I need the perfect product launch formula script. That's not where you're going to make your money. Now, 3 years from now, 5 years from now, maybe it is, right? Once you've honed your skills, delivering a dead bang, product launch formula video series is something that can be hugely successful. It's a way to make a bunch of money. It's a way to bring, affiliates in, do things like the Marie Forleo B School launch or the Stu McLaren Tribe launch. You could do all that. Or really honing your webinar skills. And so having launches like Amy Porterfield has for her Digital Course Academy, that can be hugely successful. But that's not going to be successful because of the launch vehicle. It's not going to be successful because you're doing that. It's going to be successful because you put in the work to find your fans, to serve your fans, to learn from your fans, to do that needs to be done. And I'm going to tell you, you can step back and take that approach and have a very good business and then hone those skills. And so my call to action to you is the first thing you need to do is find your fans. And then once you find them, start serving them. And so I'm going to be talking about that a lot over the coming weeks, months, the rest of this year, because I believe it's my calling is to help entrepreneurs understand that that's where they need to be spending their time, their money, et cetera. If you could spend money, it shouldn't be on trying to get people into a launch early on. If you have a very limited budget, it should be in finding your fans, getting them onto your list, nurturing them, learning from them. And then, only then, are you going to be in a position to actually start selling to them. So I'm going to be talking about it. I'm actually going to jump in here again next week on Monday to kind of talk about the first step. I'm going to, hopefully I can figure out the tech. I'm going to, share my screen and is my hope of help people get some ideas of how can they go about trying to find out where their fans hang out. Cause that's really the first thing you got to do is you got to figure out where do your fans live online? And I know I heard all these stories about that early on and I couldn't figure out. People like, oh, we'll go to Reddit. No, go to that. I don't think any of that stuff's useful. But I'm actually going to teach you and show you some very intuitive ways that you can do it on Facebook and learn these things and then find ways to hang out with your fans and learn from them. And that's kind of the first step. Before you can find them and get them into your world, you need to actually kind of bring them or be in their world. Learn from them, listen to what they say, understand what they're thinking. Once you get there, then you can start attracting them to yourself. So that's what I'm going to be talking about on Monday. I'm going to try to come in midday, about the same time. Hopefully I'm going to try to do it noon or 1 o'clock Eastern time. But I've got some things I'm actually having to travel on Tuesday next week, but I want to make sure I get it on Monday so that you'll have that and can take a look at it. So stay tuned on Monday. But until then, I would love, put a comment on this video about, have you tried launching and it didn't work? What have you tried? What has worked? And if you're someone who has tried to really kind of, build a relationship with your fans, how have you done it? What's working for you? I'd love to hear about that too. So that's it for this week. Hope you have a great weekend. Talk to you later.